Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, happy trade deadline day, my boy. It seemed like things were going to be a smidget weak sauce. We were a little worried that we were going to have a slow trade deadline. We thought all the suitors were going to be scared off by the nasty work that was the Trae Young transaction. Instead, there was nasty work done. There truthfully was.
Yeah.
But things picked up in the last 48 hours and did really help push this trade deadline to being a lot more fun than it was set to be. TV, I don't think a single thing that happened at this trade deadline we thought was going to happen. You know, there's certain players or certain teams that you're like, yeah, they're going to get in the mix. Yeah, they're going to make a move. Yeah, they're going to be one of the top names for this player. And, you know, at least one or two of them tend to kind of shake out just because all the writing's on the wall. TV, I don't think a single thing that happened at this trade deadline was foreseeable. And I'm not going to lie, in a weird way, I kind of like it that way a lot more.
Bro, if you told us, we recorded the last time was 9 days ago. If you told me that at the end of this trade deadline, that James Harden was going to be a Cav, Anthony Davis was going to be a Wizard, and Triple J was somehow on the Jazz, I would be laughing at your face. And the fact that all of this transpired in the last 72 hours or so is absolutely nuts.
Crazy.
And that's the craziness of the NBA trade deadline, man. A lot of these things were reported beforehand, but we ended up at this point. And you know how we do it, Jay. We're going to be going through what we aim for, like 85% of these trades. There's a bunch of like filler trades near the end there. But at the same time, we're going to try to get through as much of these as possible. A lot of big trades to go through. And look, no other topics going to talk about. This is purely the NBA trade deadline recap special. And guys, you don't understand how quickly we're turning around from this. We're recording this at currently 3:33 p.m. We are 30 minutes since the passing of the trade deadline, so we are right on top of this too. So you're going to get basically our immediate reactions to all of the trades, and we're going to talk it through today. I'm super excited to go into this. Should be a very fun episode. But Jay, before we go into these many, many trades, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content, where you get the picks, the clips, the reactions, the news, all the different series. And so make sure you check us out over there. It's the best daily NBA content. And if you want to know what's going to happen with the Daily NBA Picks Challenge punishment for December, January, we're going to do it in the next episode, because we're going to focus on the trade deadline special here. But Jay ended up losing to December, January, which means we're going to do some sort of Valentine's Day related punishment for this one. So be sure to check it out on the next episode of the podcast. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Again, I just want to reiterate, thank you guys for 100 subscribers. We're going to continue to grow. Hopefully, a lot of you guys check out this new episode here as well. Talking about the trade deadline should be super fun. And if you're listening to any of us, on any of the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, make sure you leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Bro, we got a lot of trades to get into. And like I told you before we started recording, if we can hit all of these, it would be a hilarious trade special. But if we can hit at least 85%, I'm down for it. I want to hit as many of these trades as humanly possible.
100%. And Jay, there's a lot of stars that got traded, but I'm probably going to go with the one that was least expected. A trade that we didn't see coming at least until the offseason. But Jaren Jackson Jr. being traded from the Memphis Grizzlies, not John Moran, no, Jaren Jackson Jr., and acquired by the Utah Jazz. So here are the trade details. Jaren Jackson Jr., John Conchar, Jock Landale, who ended up on the Atlanta Hawks at the end of all this, and Vince Williams Jr. in exchange for Walton Clayton Jr., so the first-round rookie of the Jazz, Kyle Anderson returning back to Memphis, Georges Niang, Taylor Hendricks, former lottery pick, the 2027 Lakers first, a first-round pick next year from the Jazz, Cleveland, and Minnesota, the most favorable of the three, and a 2031 unprotected Phoenix Suns pick, which should be interesting. Jay, I want to hear your thoughts on this Jaren Jackson Jr. one. I thought he could be possibly traded, but the fact that it happened this trade deadline was probably more shocking more than anything.
I mean, yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? Like, obviously, of the Memphis Grizzlies players being discussed as potential trade chips, if it's between John Morant and Triple J, it felt like it was a practical layup, no pun intended, that John Morant would be the one moved. Not just simply out of the fact that all of the disgruntled behavior around the John Morant situation, but also, I'm not gonna lie, the buy low aspect set by the Trae Young transaction made it where, like, I mean, unless Memphis just decided to be entirely too stingy, which at the end of the day is kind of what ended up being the severance package here, because Memphis could not find a team that was willing to part with a first round pick, same way as in the Washington Wizards situation, they did not pair with let go of a first round pick. Memphis was trying to find one and couldn't get one either. They held on for dear life. Triple J in this situation, I mean, you talk about a Utah Jazz team that we've been hearing for months now, maybe even like 2 years now. Whenever we heard rumors around like this team not wanting to move off of Lauri Markkanen, it's like, no, we're a team that's trying to build towards something. We don't know yet what, but we know it's something. This was one of those moves where you're like, oh crap, they were dead serious.
Yeah.
They were dead serious. Because this felt like the trade deadline where it was like, if you were gonna move Lauri, it would probably be now. The teams that were in contention for him were like your Detroit Pistons of the world and things of that nature. And instead, you flipped it on its head and you got Lauri more help. And think about the lineup that the Utah Jazz are going to be running out next season now, right? Like, you look at the fact that they have Keontae George, they have Lauri Markkanen, they have Ace Bailey. You bring in Triple J. They bring back Walker Kessler, which sounds like one of their biggest aspirations for this offseason. Like, that's a starting five that, like, at least feels like a solid play-in caliber team next season in the West.
And the depth is looking nice, too, with freaking Bryce over there. Hopefully, Cody Williams has looked a little bit better. Like, this, Kyle Filipowski, all those type of dudes. This is low-key a solid but fun team in the West next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But yeah, no, this was... I don't think it was, like, surprising that the Jazz made a move. I think it's more the timing more than anything.
Yes.
Because like you mentioned, like, they've been holding off on the Lauri Markkanen trade what feels like for the last year and a half, where many people are like, man, you guys are going into this rebuild. Why are you keeping around Lauri? And they're like, no. Something's going to happen. Trust. It happened. But again, it's the timing more than anything. Because we both know, Jay, their pick this season is like, I think, is it the top 8 protected?
Yeah, they're in a pretty solid spot where they should, honestly, kind of similar to where I think you're heading with this one. There's going to be big questions about whether or not Jaren Jackson Jr. plays and how much. Because the idea would be to still try to keep your pick this year. Because if I'm not mistaken, I actually think Utah might not have their pick next season.
It's the most favorable. I mean, it's part of the trade. It was the most favorable of them.
Yeah.
I think Minnesota and some other team as well.
Yeah, because of the trade for Jaren Jackson Jr., they've literally taken themselves out of the running for their own pick next season. So they kind of have to, I mean, not just because of the caliber of this class, but given that context as well, they kind of have to maximize the most out of this year's draft capital. So I do, like you say, like you kind of are leading towards, you kind of wonder like what that means for Jaren as of this season.
Yeah. And the thing is with Jaren Jackson Jr., we don't even hit the injury history that he has had. I don't think it's going to take much to really, potentially shut him down. We're going to talk about that with Anthony Davis later on too, as well. But I like the outlook of this Jazz team. Is how good is it going to be in this loaded Western Conference? I'm not sure. But it really felt like the Utah Jazz were really treading water ever since the Donovan Mitchell trade, and they haven't really progressed forward, right?
Yeah.
Because the year after they traded Donovan Mitchell, they were surprisingly solid when they added Will Hardy. I mean, I think they had like 37 wins or something. People were calling Will Hardy, the people's coach of the year, because how on earth did he lead this Jazz team to 37 wins? But ever since then, they were like, okay, we're going to try and tank for a pick. You can only put your fans and your players through this for so long.
Yeah.
So this is them really saying, okay, we've done this for enough. We're done not being competitive starting next year. Basically,
right.
Starting next year. So this is, I think, the big reason why they did this too. Remember, Jaren Jackson's Jr.'s new contract is going to take into effect next year, where this year he's making like, what, 36, 37 million? Next year he's going to be making like 50 mil plus. So this is like, it's probably easier to make the trade happen here. But even with like trading for Jaren Jackson Jr., people are looking at the picks that they, gave up. It's not a massive risk. I mean, you are trading next year's your own pick next year, but the Lakers pick in 2027, as long as they have Luka, that's not going to be in the lottery. And then the only one that's like really interesting is the 2031 Phoenix pick. But at the end of the day, it's not your own pick, and so like you don't really have like too much of an attachment to it. You know that's something that you cannot control at the end of the day.
Right.
So them trading for Jaren Jackson Jr., and we're gonna talk about this with the Anthony Davis thing too. Like, you can only be bad for so long if you're some of these bottom feeder teams. And we've talked about the Jazz and the Wizards as bottom feeder teams for what feels like the last 4 to 5 years. And I feel like with the Wizards a lot longer than that since they got off of John Wall. That's how long this has been going on for them. So getting Jaren Jackson Jr. and him fitting your team, what dare I say, like almost perfectly? Because a freaking front court of him and Walker Kessler defensively is scary, bro. Because now you don't have to worry about Jaren Jackson and his rebounding limitations. Walker Kessler could deal with that. You know that Lauri's a solid rebounder himself. And that puts Jaren Jackson Jr. back into his depoy role. Just being a roamer, being end-to-end, corner to corner of each of the court, and being just one of the best roaming defending players in the league. There's a reason why he was a former Defensive Player of the Year. So, it's a risk, yes, for the Utah Jazz, but it's not as big of a risk as many people think. And they didn't give up a lot of their their blue chip young guys, and while also not taking them out of the possibility of getting a top pick this year. Because if you add, we're gonna say there's a couple teams, if they still end up getting someone like an AJ, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, this Utah Jazz team could look real scary pretty soon.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think the most interesting thing about this Utah Jazz team more than anything is, TV, they can keep doing this. They can keep doing this if they really want to. They're in a situation very similar. We don't talk about it very often because the Thunder are in one of those spots where they don't really utilize it to its best potential. But they're one of those teams very similar to the Thunder that's like, yo, we got all this draft capital, and whenever we're ready to pull the trigger, we can do something dangerous. Now, something that I want to give the Utah Jazz a little bit more credit for in that same vein is, TV, we've seen Danny Ainge with this same level of chips in his hand before. Jiggling dice in his pocket for Lord knows how long until a hole falls right through it, right? With the Boston Celtics. How many years did we go where we said, man, the Celtics could get KD, they could get Paul George, they could get Jimmy Butler. They never pulled the trigger. Never pulled the trigger. And it feels like, although many of us will probably feel it as very delayed, I would say this was a perfect time to strike as the Jazz to go get a player, a former DPOY at that, a very good fit as a four-man that can play next to Lauri Markkanen, who naturally can fit well at the three. We've seen him do it with Cleveland. We've even seen him do it with the Utah Jazz. Then you also have a premier big man at the 5 spot. Similar to how we saw some of Jaren Jackson Jr.'s better times in Memphis next to Steven Adams, and we've seen him play very well next to Zach Edey.
Exactly.
Walker Kessler, you can make an argument. I don't even think it would be debatable to many. Walker Kessler may be better as an overall offensive and defensive center than either one of those two. And you place him at that 5 position next to Jaren Jackson Jr., that 3-man trifecta right there in the front court alone is going to cause a lot of problems next season. The continued progression of Keontae George means a ton as well. I do have questions about the growth of guys like Ace Bailey. Obviously, you mentioned Cody Williams earlier. I like what Bryce Sensabaugh has been able to bring to this team as well. Will he be somebody that can kind of lock down that 2-guard spot? There's still questions to be had about this team. Don't get me wrong. But, like we said at the top, the foundation after this move, I really, really like. The foundation that's set by this move, I like a lot.
Yeah, and not to mention, I didn't even mention Isaiah Collier, who freaking had 22 assists the other night. Yeah, shout out to him as well. I really do think, and one more thing about the Jazz before we move on to the Grizzlies real quick, is I don't think the Jazz make this move if it wasn't for Keontae George's, like escalation, the growth of his game this year.
Yeah.
Because now they're probably thinking with Ace just drafted, with whoever we're gonna get in this draft, with Laurie Kessler, and now like borderline All Star. Let's be honest, this year and Keontae George.
Mm,
Okay, now we have something here. Now we have something that we can actually like commit to. Let's trade these picks, like you mentioned. Like we're gonna talk about the Thunder later with it as well. We can't draft everyone with all these picks. There's just not enough
right.
spots on a roster. So
Right.
now let's try to consolidate some of these picks and get a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate on a year-to-year basis, along with our offensive weapons.
Yeah.
I think it's a great move. Again, it's just the timing that's weird. I think not a lot of people would be this confused if it was the off season more than anything. But I
Right.
still think it's a good move nonetheless. But talk about the Grizzlies really quick, because Jay, they have now tied the Oklahoma City Thunder with
Mm,
13 first-round picks in the next 7 years.
yeah.
They got 5 or 4 from the Desmond Bain trade, 3 here. We know what you're going to get from Jaw. How you feel about this deal coming back to them, and like them basically coming into a rebuild finally?
Honestly, I think that the interesting part about it is just going to figure out how the final nail in the coffin goes through, right? They're going to all this signals is that they're going to try to run back the John Morant trade conversations this upcoming offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where maybe they even try to, sit John Morant, maybe play him a little bit less, put themselves in a position to be in the best spot possible for the upcoming draft, right? I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that's going to be on their mind this season. As far as some of the contracts are concerned, obviously Walter Clayton Jr., somebody who's like, a bit of an older rookie, well developed, kind of fits in the Jalen Wells mold of somebody who you think can kind of play right out the gate. Has already kind of shown signs of that. Kyle Anderson only has one more year under contract after this. You could always find a way to reflip him or put him in a position where maybe he's just somebody who falls off after next season. Taylor Hendricks, you kind of hope that under the development, the
Yeah.
developmental staff of
I hope so. Yeah, for sure.
Grizzlies, that he finally gets a chance to shine, because with Utah, it just felt like there were too many bigs around him for him to really
Yeah.
get a chance, you know?
Yeah, and he got lost in the shuffle, especially like after his during his injury as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, that injury really put him in a tough spot. But think about all the names that are in front of him: Laurie, duh. Walker, duh. I mean, even Filipowski coming along really well at some point late last season, kind of really started to stir the pot. Where that front court depth was in a weird spot where Taylor Hendricks has like a rim running center type. I mean, where do you find room for him on the floor on a
Yes.
consistent
Yeah.
basis, right? And then Georges Niang, he
Mm.
actually falls off as an expiring contract at the end of this year, becoming an unrestricted free agent literally this upcoming summer. So that's
Yeah.
going to be money that comes off the books. Now, one thing that as the Grizzlies, I'm not going to say you should be pissed about, because the volume of first round picks does matter, and the fact that they get 2 first round picks in 2027 is kind of cool. But as the Jazz, just to kind of round this all about in a way, shout out to the Jazz for not really having to give up a valuable pick of their own in any right.
Shout
Right?
out, yeah, no, great job using like other people's picks
Yeah,
to
man. I
do it.
mean, most favorable of 2027 Jazz, Cavaliers, or Minnesota Timberwolves. That's basically them giving up their pick more than likely
Yeah,
around that time frame. 2027 is an interesting time because someone like James Harden might not be on the team anymore. Things of that nature. We'll get to the Cavs a little bit later, but that could look very different. Minnesota, we'll see, but like that's likely going to be the Jazz pick. So sure, Lakers in 2027. I mean, Luka's on the team, and they're going to try their best to build around him very heavily around that year. That seems like that's going to be a late first round pick to me. Phoenix Suns 2031. Who knows at that point, right? So like, you didn't really give up anything of like insane value overall, especially because you got to keep your reins on this year's pick, which I wouldn't have traded for Jaren Jackson Jr. anyway, to be quite frank, just because of like how valuable this year's draft class looks. But for the Grizzlies, you have cap flexibility now. You get 2 guys that you probably do still want in your developmental system in Clayton and Taylor Hendricks. You have first round picks down the lane that you can be the Utah Jazz, or you can be
yeah,
the Washington Wizards a couple seasons from now, where maybe you make that swing to go bring in somebody who can be a young corner piece to kind of set things back up as part of this reset that they're going through, right? They can position themselves in that way. So it's a weird spot to be in, and the fact that the rebuild is like 75% committed to, because the John Morant lingering situation leaves so much still to be in question, I will say I don't want to say the Grizzlies could have gotten a better deal per se, but man, I didn't think the Jazz were going to be the team that were going to be the ones to pull the trigger. And I mean, shout out to the Jazz for being undercover agents in the midst of all of this, but I guess the only question you have to ask yourself was there a better deal out there than this for Jaren? And,
Yeah,
and,
no,
and
that's true. And I
I
think like
mean, later
yeah,
reports will tell us, but that's tough.
yeah. But I think like what this trade is, and that this actually kind of like transitions us nicely to the next trade we're gonna talk about, is these bottom feeder teams being buyers at this trade deadline,
Yeah,
which a lot of people didn't like see coming,
no,
but also makes a lot of sense because with this Jaren Jackson deal, I mean, it's so important with this first and second apron era of the NBA where
mm,
you give money to the right people. And if you are trying to make these type of trades and like, make sure that you want to keep your guys on your team, you have to make sure that they're, making the right amount of money, making sure that you duck a lot of these luxury tax on of sort of penalties that you have so that not only are you paying like extra money that you don't need to, but also remain gives you flexibility when it comes to these trades.
yeah,
That's why it's so hard. I mean, like compared to this one, I mean, you got to see so many players getting moved. Something like a James Harden trade, only so many trades that can happen for James Harden, especially if you're the Cavs, who are a second apron team, really limits you to trying to see what you can get because you can't
yeah,
aggregate contracts. So you see teams like the Jazz and the trade that we're going to be talking about next here for Anthony Davis of the Washington Wizards. The cap flexibility of these teams with a lot of cap room, with a lot of rookie contracts, are able to absorb this money.
mm,
So so that which makes it like where contenders who you can say maybe should go after Jaren Jackson Jr. as the final piece or Anthony Davis take a risk for that. They don't want to be handcuffing themselves to a certain apron, especially if they don't know 100% what they're getting, especially with an Anthony Davis. But a team that can take that risk is the Washington Wizards, who did end up making the trade for Anthony Davis, pairing him with Trae Young. I don't know if they're going to see the floor together this season or not.
probably not.
Probably not, let's be completely honest. But he ends up getting traded to the Wizards. And I know people are going to be like, oh, this is end up what the Dallas Mavericks got for Luka Doncic at the end of all this. But this is end up being the trade. The
Mm,
Wizards receiving Anthony Davis, Dante Exum, who's out for the season, Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, and the Mavs receive Chris Middleton, Marvin Bagley, AJ Johnson, who got traded every single year of his career so far, Malachi Branham, who ended up moving again afterwards, as well as the 2026 OKC pick, 2030 top 20 protected Golden State pick, and 3 second-round picks.
yeah.
We heard that Anthony Davis was on the block for a while now, but again, the Wizards swoop in here, buy a little deal, just like they did on Trae Young. Jay, your thoughts?
Dude, I think it's very impressive by the Washington Wizards that they were able to do this in a way that feels like I can't judge it as much as I would like to. Right? Like I
Yeah,
feel like you go into any Anthony Davis trade and you're just like, oh my God, you sold. You jumped out of your body and made a deal off of a guy's hypothetical version of himself. Blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
right? And you find yourself wanting to be a critic of any trade that involves Anthony Davis because he was traded for Luka Doncic and he hasn't been healthy since he played with the Dallas Mavericks and he might be damaged goods going into it because he still requires surgery at some point either during the season or next season, right? And there's all these things that you want to take into consideration that make you feel like you're supposed to judge the trade negatively. TV, let me tell you something that's so insane about this situation for the Washington Wizards. Hardy has a club option next year, which means if they choose to decline it, that's money they save. D'Angelo Russell is an expiring contract this summer, which means that's money they save. Dante Exum is an expiring contract set to become an unrestricted free agent as well next to Russell. That makes him an expiring contract, which saves them money. Right? Huge situation. You know, they always talk about the quarterback method in the NFL of right trying to make big hitter swings around the youthful talent that you have while they are on their rookie contract, right? It's the idea of like, you know, the quarterback is going to get himself quite the payday when that time comes around. So you got to do as much as you can on the margins and anywhere in between to max out the salary cap that you do have, to get yourself some heavy hitters to maximize that time frame, because once that guy becomes expensive, it becomes very hard to build around him moving forward past that big payday, right? I guess you could say that the pillar piece of all of this is Alex Sarr. I think that's where you would probably be leaning, and the steps that he's made from year 1 to year 2 have been very strong strides. Still something to be desired as a three-point shooter, and some of the offense that he provides as a pick-and-roll threat. The defense, I think, has improved mightily from year 1 to year 2, and already was a very solid defender as a rim protector last season. This team needed a legitimate 5-man to play next to Sarr. Sarr is more of a 4. And I know Anthony Davis is going to hate the hell out of being told he's going to be a 5.
Both of those guys hate being the 5 from like all reports. So
but here's the thing. The reality of the situation is Alex Sarr played best when Jonas Valanciunas was next to him. It sounds crazy to say, but the idea of having a legitimate 5-man next to Alex Sarr brought the best out of him. Now you get as high of an upside swing at the 5 spot as you possibly could get for this kind of deal in Anthony Davis, where the best player that was traded by the Wizards was Chris Middleton. I mean, if you're the Wizards, you're in a really good situation because of what you've been able to do. You pair him with Trae Young, mind you. And I'm gonna pass it to you after this, but they're already not letting Trae Young play. What doesn't need to be said is understood. The idea is we're gonna go into next season. He still has 1 more year under contract. The likelihood is that they're gonna extend him. Right? That's what sounds like the play here. If I'm the Washington Wizards, I'm giving you the wink, wink, nudge, nudge to say, hey, AD, go ahead and get the surgery, my guy.
Get the surgery, bro.
Go ahead and get it. You said before the trade deadline you wouldn't get the surgery if you went to a contending team because you didn't want it to end your season. Man, you know we're at the bottom of the standings. Just go get the surgery, get yourself right. Explore DC a little bit. Stay out them trenches. Don't go too close to Trump's house. Mind your business. You know what I mean? And put yourself in a position where next season, hopefully you'll be healthy. Now you're a perfect pick and roll partner next to Trae Young. Mind you, Trae Young's never played with a big like AD ever. Never played with a big even close to the caliber of a healthy AD ever. Neither John Collins, nor a Clint Capella, nor a Onyeka Okongwu at the peak of their powers has met even what a standard healthy AD looks like. Next, let alone playing next to a passer like Trae Young, which we know with the ability playing next to somebody like LeBron James can be somebody that can thrive next to a high-level passing point guard. So, I mean, a lot to like about that. And again, another very competent roster that also has the chance to add a top 3 pick if everything rolls right this year.
Man, Darren Peterson, probably not Cam Boozer for this team, let's be honest now. Maybe still. Maybe still. You never know with the Anthony Davis injury stuff.
True.
But either AJ or Darren Peterson on this team, whoo,
dude,
this team becomes, especially in a weak Eastern Conference, bro, they might be fighting for home court advantage next year.
Dude, they basically did what everybody thought the Hawks were trying to do.
Yeah.
If you really think about it. And when all of the rumors first started swirling around the idea of Anthony Davis to Atlanta, if you remember when all of that stuff first started, the idea was like, all right, bet. We'll add AD next to Trae Young. We got Jalen Johnson at the 4. And then we got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels. Like, oh, snap, we're going to kill defensively. And, yeah, Jalen Johnson and Trae Young leave a little bit to be desired on the defensive end. But what they bring as offensive players makes up for that tenfold, not to mention what AD brings as a two-way player. All right, cool, we can work with that. Now, for the Wizards...
And with the Pelicans pick, too. With the Pelicans pick that they had, yeah.
Yeah, right. And with the Pelicans pick that they had, they kind of are in the same, they kind of were supposed to be in the same position of like and we could possibly get a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
Now, the Wizards get to do that, and they have complete control over making sure they can be top 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro.
It's a really good swing, not committing yourself to long-term money. And you can say to AD, look, you're fully guaranteed next year. You have a $50-something million player option, which, let's be honest, when you're 34 or 35 years old with your injury history, he's probably going to take.
Facts.
if you want an extension here, we have our picks. We have our picks going forward. You have to prove to us why you need to have this extension because we have stuff like coming through very soon. So another low risk, high reward swing, and shout out to the Wizards for doing it right, taking on bad contracts like C.J. McCollum and Chris Middleton while getting picks, and then flipping the big contracts for these disgruntled stars at their lowest trade value, and going for those very low risk, high reward swings. That's how you freaking do it if you are a rebuilding team.
That's a fact.
They did it right. Whether this turns out to be a positive thing or a negative thing, obviously there's so many injuries involved, so you never truly know. But it's a risk you could be willing to take in the weak East. The Wizards have done this right, and I'm excited to see what they have going on next year. If you think this is going to be still like a 40-win team, this is going to be a damn fun 40-win team coming into next year. So I think even if you want to criticize them, like, why are you trying to trade for a broken down AD? Again, calculated risk. They made the type of the calculated risk that was needed for a team who was trying to bring in AD.
Yeah. And shout out to Dallas. I mean, this is one of those that we can't do too much. Like, we can't do too much with, right? Chris Middleton, expiring contract. AJ Johnson, you mentioned it earlier, traded every single year of his career. Shout out to Bro for at least being productive in the time that he has been able to be on the floor. But somebody that's kind of just still trying to find his trudge in the league. Malachi Branham, he's an interesting prospect, but again, another guy traded multiple times. If I'm not mistaken, he started his career on San Antonio, right? So
yeah, he's on the Hornets now too. Yeah, he's on the Hornets now too.
Interesting fit next to someone like Cooper Flag at the center spot. But again, not somebody that you're putting long-term stock into. But TV, we know the reality of the situation, right? This is about them trying their best to do as much as they can to wipe their hands of the Nico Harrison thing. This wasn't about trying to get a fair deal for AD. Because there's no version of a fair deal for AD when it gets tied back to Luka Doncic. Because there's no fair deal for Luka Doncic, truthfully, right? So I think the most important thing, and I think Mavericks fans more than all, but everybody that evaluates this trade, if you're going to be the guy who decides you're going to tag this as, oh man, the Mavericks got Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, and Marvin Bagley and picks for Luka Doncic, then you're seeing this through the rose-colored glasses version of trying to get yourself some views. If you're going to look at this through the real team-building aspect of trying to look at this franchise moving forward with Cooper Flag at the forefront of it, this was about trying to detach yourself from the moves that were made as the new regime that is now in the building and putting yourself in position to not only get your guys in the building, but give yourself as many cracks at being able to draft guys you want next to Cooper Flag as possible, and put yourself in a position also to have some financial flexibility to now look at this team and say, look, we're going to build this team around Cooper Flag. Does Klay Thompson still has one more season under contract? Najee Marshall has been hooping. No wonder they didn't want to sell off of him at the trade deadline. I don't even know if they would have been able to get a fair price for him with the way he's been playing so far this season. And they don't want to move off of Kyrie Irving because guess what? He might just actually be a really solid fit next to Coop. But they need to see it first before they feel the comfortability of moving off of him first. But at least even with all of that veteran talent still sitting on the franchise, mind you, Derek Lively still on this team. Who am I missing? Daniel Gafford still on this team, right? They just now have more flexibility to finally do what they want to do instead of being stuck with the gun fully loaded, barrels bowling, just waiting to get shot in the foot. Because the longer they held on to AD, the worse this was gonna get. Truthfully.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you cannot tie this deal to the freaking Luka Doncic thing. No. Two different regimes, and in terms of making the logical move to get off a damaged good in Anthony Davis, you just have to just clear your books. Just get as much draft capital as you could, which they were able to in this trade. Mind you, not the best draft capital, but this is what you expect when you get into an AD and when you're trying to trade AD right now. You just want to, like you mentioned, wipe your hands clean and you move forward. And now you know what you have moving forward is Cooper Flag, probably a top 10 pick in this year's draft, probably if they don't make it to the play-in. So you got to move on, move forward, and think about it this way. Luka Doncic now is in your rear view mirror. You've completely wiped your hands clean of that situation. You got to focus on the team you have right now. There's still some promise there, and use this as a stepping stone without having talk or discuss whatever happened beforehand. Because they got rid
Right.
of Nico Harrison too, because of that reason. So now
Right.
just completely new regime, completely new everything. Let's start fresh. And
Right.
I think the Dallas Mavericks more than anything did that with this trade, which should be
Definitely.
a win for them. It should be a win for them overall.
Yeah, definitely agree. Definitely agree. Got to give them credit for finally pulling the trigger. This felt like one of those that scarily would have made. This one is the one that felt like more like how the Ja Morant one ended up all along,
Yeah,
which was that it was going to drag to the offseason and then they're going to get some kind of capital that they could have just gotten at the trade deadline, but instead now they get lowballed even worse come
yeah.
come the off season, and there's a million other things attached to the issues that just kind of drag this out worse than it needs to be. They just kind of got themselves from up under some BS.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hopefully, again, Dallas Mavericks can move forward with them. Good job to the Washington Wizards for buying low. Now with Anthony Davis along with Trae Young earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another trade because multiple top 75 players got traded this deadline, which is kind of crazy. But we're gonna go to the one which kind of happened really quickly because this one was not in the books even 4 days ago, 5 days
Yeah.
ago, and this one really came together overnight. It felt like because
Pretty
James
much.
Harden is now a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers as the Cavs move off of Darius Garland and his two-toe injury and a second-round pick in exchange for James Harden. Now, before I ask for your opinion on this, it's good. It's important to note the Cavs were a second apron team, which means they couldn't aggregate salaries to make a trade happen.
Right.
Fortunate, and they cannot bring any money in, so they couldn't add money to the deal, so they can go even deeper into the cap, under the over the cap.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that James Harden made 1.2 million under Darius Garland made it so they could just do basically a 1-for-1 swap and a second round pick. There's very few trades you can make as a second apron team, and somehow they made a blockbuster out of doing that. That's crazy. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this trade.
So, I mean, are we going to pair this with the Keon Ellis trade as well, or you want to take
Sure.
that separately? How you want to go about?
You know what? Let's talk about. I guess let's talk about kind of the new Cavs regime that they have going on because they like you mentioned they made a trade even days prior to this to kind of keep them in contention in the East as they get off of DeAndre Hunter, who was very much not happy as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they were able to bring in Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis.
Yes.
And all they had to give up was a 2027 second round pick and DeAndre Hunter. The Kings get DeAndre Hunter, while the Bulls at the time received Dario Saric, who ended up on the Pistons eventually. But they also get Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. So definitely a lot of new faces, but definitely keeps them very much competitive in the East.
Yeah. So when we put all of that together, right? Because now that the framework is fully set, this Cleveland Cavaliers team, I love everything that they have going on for the way they're structured now. I think the most important thing is that they got tougher. I think that's the word I would use for this team. They got tougher, whether that's tough shot making by adding someone like James Harden, who also, by the way, is more reliable as far as being on the floor.
Floor, yes.
We don't speak about this too much, but the best availability, the best, ability is availability, right? So, compare James Harden, right? Who you say what you want about what he does in the postseason.
Fair.
One thing that you can say is at least that he's there and performs in the postseason. Something we can't say very consistently about Darius Garland, for example, who's currently injured as we speak, right? You look at Dennis Schroeder and you look at Keon Ellis, very high level perimeter defenders. Keon Ellis was ranked as one of the better, I think he was a top 10 perimeter defender as far as forcing steals, creating turnovers, and as far as point of attack defenders were ranked, he was up there with Alex Caruso and Lugens Dort and guys like that last season as a point of attack defender. You just added that to your team that has Evan Mobley and Jared Allen as rim protectors behind that. You also, in Dennis Schroeder, add somebody with the ball handling and scoring chops ability We saw with the Brooklyn Nets, even if it was for a short period of time, that's a guy who's capable of averaging 17 to 20 plus points per game. Now he comes off the bench as part of a second unit where who's going to be the guy that takes the ball out of Dennis Schroeder's hands on the second unit? Sam Merrill? No disrespect, but I'm saying that to say that you actually entice a situation for Dennis Schroeder to kind of regain his confidence a little bit by being like the man on the second unit to
Like
run
he
that.
was with the Pistons. Like he
Yeah.
was with the Pistons.
Yes, like he was on the Pistons, like he was on the Brooklyn Nets, where he just got the ball and got to operate at a really high level and made the most out of his opportunities. Again, very short-lived time frames, but nonetheless got a lot out of him in those roles. Now, the scariest thing for me for this team is the front court depth is kind of nasty now. Ain't too much behind Evan Mobley, ain't too much behind Jarrett Allen. It's been like that all year. That's kind of one of the things I thought maybe they would kind of get handled at this deadline, is trying to find a backup big. Who says they don't still get that done somewhere on the waiver wire, right after all of the buyout market stuff kind of settles the dust? That's going to be tough with them as a second apron team, obviously. But you needed legit shot making and playmaking next to Donovan Mitchell. You've got legitimate rim protecting defenders and rim running caliber bigs in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who should be able to coexist with James Harden. You have legitimate perimeter defenders that you can place next to Donovan Mitchell and or James Harden and Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. And you sacrificed a disgruntled DeAndre Hunter, an underwhelming Lonzo Ball, and a Darius Garland who hasn't played for you very much this year. I mean, to get this good while basically just moving off of strictly distressed assets as far as I'm concerned, talk about a way for a Cleveland Cavaliers team that clearly needed to do something desperate this season to make the most out of their desperation. That's how I view it. They made the most out of being a desperate team.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely just feels like desperation moves. I like the moves, but it's always like worrying to me when a team does act out of desperation, because it feels like maybe you're jumping the gun a little bit, and it like a lot could go wrong when you like make these desperation moves. You mentioned James Harden. At the end of the day, when we start with the Darius Garland trade, Darius Garland just cannot stay on the floor. That's what it really comes down to. James Harden is 10 years older, but he's still averaging that like 25, 6, and 8 sort of deal, like he has been for most of his career. It shortens your championship window, or at least your playoff run window, but it also elevates it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Is this enough to face with a Knicks team and a Pistons team? Hopefully we could see like in these months leading up to the playoffs how this team plays together. Hopefully they can stay healthy too. But the Cavs clearly saw that this week Eastern Conference is up. It's still, even till now, up for grabs. The Pistons didn't make a big time move like we were kind of expecting. They basically stood pat and just added a bit more shooting. The Cavs, out of all of these top teams, were the ones who took the swing.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to make sure that they were competitive here. They ended up getting more guys that can kind of fit within in a defensive system, a la, like you mentioned, getting those like get it dirty done guys with like Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. On paper right now looks good. Now, do the people on the court make you confident this could be a finals team? Because at the end of the day, you're being led by Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, two guys who have famously got cut short in the playoffs on multiple occasions. But like you mentioned, was this a swing that they were willing to take? That they were willing to take? Yes. And probably thinking like, even though Darius Garland, when healthy, is a pretty good point guard for this team, we can't keep saying when healthy for too long. We can't keep saying the idea of Darius Garland on this team will still fit well, because that's what we've been trying to say over the last 2 years. If Darius Garland was healthy, if he wasn't having all these injuries, then this Cavs team could finally be, fully realized. But it hasn't happened, and the Cavs are done being that maybe team. And you gotta respect it that they're able to make these moves. But at the end of the day, like, I still do like have my questions on this team, but hopefully they can actually put it together in this East because it's again still very much wide open.
I think the biggest thing is like taking advantage of, like you said, the fact that the East doesn't feel like anybody tilted it in their favor outside of Cleveland making these moves. Like, I
Right.
think it's impressive that they were as aggressive as they even were. TV at one point, they were shopping Jared Allen in what was going to be the pursuit of trying to get Anthony Davis from the Dallas Mavericks. So this was a team that was trying their very best to be as aggressive as humanly possible to get better at this deadline. And if we go down the list, and we'll talk about some of the teams that did at least add something on the margins. But if you go down the list in the Eastern Conference of teams like the Boston Celtics, who I think did get better by adding Vooch, but the New York Knicks, who their best addition was probably Jose Alvarado. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Detroit Pistons, as you mentioned beforehand, stood pat, right? The Indiana Pacers, we're not worried about them this season. I think Ivica Zubac is a W pickup for them when Tyrese Halliburton comes back. But right now, I don't fear them at this point, right? So when you go down the list of the teams that even when they did make moves, the Wizards, for example, who balled out as far as I'm concerned on the trade market this season between Young and Anthony Davis. But I'm not worried about them this year. So it's almost like not even just realizing how wide open the East is this year. It's also kind of taking advantage of the fact that, like, if you don't get it done this year, next year could get wicked.
Yeah.
When teams like the Boston Celtics get Jason Tatum back, Tyrese Halliburton comes back for the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons come back next year with a little bit more money and maybe some learning experience from the postseason that tells them, okay, now's the time to make the big move to go after Kawhi Leonard or Michael Porter Jr. or whatever the case may be, right? You go down that list and it's like, all right, bro, if we don't handle this right now, like, hey, maybe Giannis could be a Knick next year for all we know. We don't know.
Yeah.
And all of that puts it in a situation where you look back at this Cleveland Cavaliers team and say, like, yo, if you had to make the most out of one season, what moves as a second apron team, and I'm glad you prefaced that earlier on at the top of the segment, as a second apron team that desperately needs to make the most out of this year before things get wicked, what can we do? Well, we added a playmaking point guard who can average 20 plus points per game and double-digit assists anytime time necessary. Dennis Schroeder is a playmaking point guard with defensive upside off the bench that can also lead as a second unit scorer. And Keon Ellis is a 37% three-point shooter who also is one of the better perimeter point of attack defenders in the league that just apparently the Sacramento Kings couldn't figure out how to use. I can't say they could have done any better. But they dang sure couldn't have done any worse than what they did to get better at this deadline.
Fair. You know what? 100% fair. I think that looking at the landscape of the East right now, they still have a chance to grab it. And it's not like they're a playing team anymore. They actually have been playing pretty damn well over like the last like couple weeks or so, getting them almost back into home court advantage in the Eastern Conference. So now with these moves, it feels like they're really trying to put themselves in that conversation with the Pistons and Knicks, which feels like the conversation that we've had basically all season long in the East. And they want to say, you know what? Let's put ourselves back in there. And with the roster we have right now, we could definitely be in contention in the East, though. And it's still something that what felt like a weird long shot, maybe at the end of December, we are back in the mix again, which is, again, good for Cavs fans. Sounds like they had to get rid of like one of their homegrown guys in Darius Garland and stuff like that. But taking advantage of the season, you can't hate them for trying. 100%. This transitions quickly to the Clippers too, because you did mention Ivica Zubac getting traded to the Indiana Pacers. It's the Clippers after going 15-3 last week over their last 18 games or so, finally getting back in the play-in mix. Cut the cord. Completely cut the cord with this team that's not named Kawhi Leonard. So we talked about James Harden moving. They ended up getting Darius Garland, who's still not available to play yet. He has 2 broken toes, by the way, guys. So he's still not able to play yet. They did get a second-round pick in that deal as well. But surprisingly, we thought that was it for the Clippers. But with 40 minutes left in the trade deadline, they finally moved Ivica Zubac. And they traded him to the Pacers in exchange for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, a 2029 unprotected first round pick from the Pacers, a 2028 Dallas second round pick, and Jay, one of the craziest protections I've ever seen. But for this year's pick, they ended up getting the Pacers pick this year, but they only receive it if it's between picks 5 to 9. So if it's top 4, it still stays with the Pacers.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 10 to 30, it still stays with the Pacers. But if it lines anywhere between 5 to 9, it turns out to be the Clippers pick, and the Pacer. And if that pick doesn't fall in between there, they end up getting a 2031 unprotected Pacers pick. A little bit confusing, but either way, they get 2 picks from the Pacers, whether it's a top 6, like 5 to 9 here, or unprotected one 2031. Jay, thoughts on this Clippers? We'll go to the Pacers soon, but this Clippers tear down more than anything.
Very similar to the Memphis thing. I would have just moved off of Kawhi if we're gonna do all of this. Like, I mean, the same thing with Memphis, where it's like John Morant's what was the analogy you had made prior to the podcast? You said the Will Smith standing in the empty home, right? Like,
Yeah,
the idea of like now, Kawhi Leonard's the last man standing in that organization. Mind you, he's the reason why the 2 guys that are not there from the original situation are not there anymore, right? I mean, or were there in the first place. He's part of why James Harden ended up with the Clippers. He's also the exact same reason Paul George was with the Clippers.
yeah,
Right? And now he's the last man standing. I'm surprised they didn't move off of him at this trade deadline. Would you probably been selling extremely low, given it would have been at the buzzer move? Sure. But I'm sure a team like the Pistons or a team like the Miami Heat would have had at least a comparable package enough to make you feel okay about moving off of Kawhi Leonard at the point that you're at right now. I mean, because I don't feel like they sold very well on Ivica Zubac, quite frankly, who finished top 5 in DPOY just last season, right? So to get Benedict Mathurin, who's a player that, by the way, you have bird rights on now, shout out to you for that, but you need to pay next year now because of the fact that he's going to be going into restricted free agency. Isaiah Jackson, who feels like a watered down version of what you already have in John Collins, and then a first round pick with stipulations that involve some kind of jump rope fanatic, like theatrics I've never heard of before that you just explained, where the best case scenario for you is that you at least get back into this draft class. You're just stuck between 5 and 9 if you do, which is literally nowhere close to the top 3, which is what the whole draft class is built off of, is the fact that the top 3 is so strong. Yes, there's depth legitimately in this draft class that makes it, stronger throughout the class, but we know the prize jewel of this draft class is to land somewhere in the top 3, and you're literally nowhere in the mix for it. If the Indiana Pacers land in the 4 spot, you don't get it. If the Indiana Pacers land in top 3, you don't get it. If the Indiana Pacers land 11, which I don't think they actually can even do.
10. Well, 10, 10 to thing. I think that's only if they start moving up the standings, right?
Yeah,
So
I think unless they start really moving up the standings, which I highly doubt they'll shoot for, there's a highly unlikely that once you start going 10 through 14, that they're not even going to be able to land in that spot. So maybe the basketball gods bless you and you land somewhere between 5 and 6 and you get to take the pick this year. But that's what you're banking on, because other than that, you just traded Ivica Zubac for Benedict Mathurin, who you have to pay, Isaiah Jackson, who's redundant, and really the most valuable of all the picks you got is a first round pick that, if it doesn't convey this year, puts to 2031. I mean, TV has a theory as to why they went about doing what they did, and I'm going to let him be the one to share it. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is one of those that felt like the Clippers were just trying to get from up under something, because at this point, I mean, to be on fire like this and just throw it all away feels like there was something else behind the scenes that we just don't have the full picture of just yet.
Yeah, I will say I will talk about the trade first. I'm on the other side of you, where I'm I actually think they actually got good value out of the Ivica Zubac, because at the end of the day, 2 unprotected picks in 2020, 29, 2031. You don't know what this Pacer team is going to look like. And we've seen what happens when teams trade unprotected picks. in like the not so foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
A lot could change in the NBA. A lot could change within a franchise. So even if it doesn't convey this year, the fact that you got like a far out Pacers team, Zubac is no longer going to be on that team anymore. Who knows what's going to happen with Tyrese Halliburton? It's not like they have a litany of a bunch of young talent that will turn into stars one day.
Right.
Like, who knows what that'll be? So I don't think it's like the picks are like the problem here. I think the Clippers just deciding now, out of all times, to completely gut their team is just strange to me.
Yeah.
I mean, they ended up getting Darius Garland, so they got 10 years younger. I actually don't think that's a horrible return for James Harden, who was looking for a long-term extension. But Darius Garland is now on this team, and you're like, okay, at least you have a 26-year-old. If you can get him in, hopefully, you can rehab him right and make sure that you get some sort of, get him still to be like a top 10 point guard in this league. That's a nice point guard to build around. Bennedict Mathurin, new situation, becoming basically the second or third option now on this team, could be a nice change for him.
Yeah.
But why trade Harden and Zubac now when things seem to be clicking? Especially when Kawhi now got named to the All-Star game, things are starting to look good. Why now? My theory, like Jay is saying, and it's more, again, just putting the tinfoil hat on sort of thing, is that, look, Kawhi Leonard's still under investigation with this whole aspiration thing. The Clippers and Steve Ballmer are still under investigation with this whole aspiration thing.
Mm.
This, to me, felt like a move where they know something behind the scenes is going to happen, and they basically jump ship before anything else comes out because they're going to lose a lot of their leverage. That's why they ended up not, they're moving on James Harden now. And more than anything, trading as weak as Zubac went. If things didn't work out this year, it probably makes more sense to trade him in the offseason. Even though I still like the package that they got for him again. 2 unprotected first round picks is always nice, especially this far down the line.
Right.
But it just seems like something fishy. I mean, it always seems like it's something fishy over there in LA with the Clippers. But this more than anything, again, is there anything to go off this? Is there any reports? No. But that thing is always lingering. And it feels like the result of that investigation that the league started before the season started might be coming closer than we think.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Clippers are, man, they're quite the franchise, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is gonna be one of those weird ones where you just wonder. There's so many what ifs attached to this version of the Clippers that, spearheaded by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and then kind of built out from there of just like how much underachieving has taken place during that time frame. They're going to be, when we look back, we'll probably do some kind of, 2025, 2026 reflection. And I know one of the main things that'll come up for me is like looking back at this Clippers team and be like, dang, the end of the Clippers era of them trying to be like, in real Western Conference contention was, I mean, that was about as underwhelming of a fall flat as we've seen. Like losing in a game 6 or game 7 in the postseason and then them blowing it up. All right, I guess you done tried to run this back so many times and you finally ran out of the ammo to keep doing it. You're getting old. Let's make the move. But again, to be on the roll that they've been on, for Kawhi to have the season he's been having, to just be named to the All-Star game after originally being snubbed, and that seeming like everything's starting to quickly turn itself around. I mean, for things to go out this way, this might be the most anticlimactic into a what-if group that we've seen in quite some time, honestly.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's definitely going to be a lot more reports around this Clipper time, during this, because people are probably thinking the same thing, why now? Why now? You were, at the bottom of the barrel of the West just a month and a half ago when you were finally turning things around. We're going to talk about the Thunder soon, but they're probably Sam Presti's in this chair, probably laughing his butt off right now, knowing that the Clippers have traded away 2 of their 3 best players, and you have basically control of their pick. It really does. It's kind of crazy how all that turns out. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what comes out with the Clippers. Is the suspension coming for Kawhi Leonard? If that thing is still ongoing, are they going to trade him in the offseason? Who knows? But there's definitely stuff along behind the scenes that we didn't know was going on. It's going to be interesting to see how all this falls out and see where the Clippers place now, because again, we don't know when Darius Garland's going to come back. Ben Mathurin, sure, he'll be in the lineup soon, but how good is this team now, especially in the loaded West? it's looking a whole lot different for them, and their outlook definitely has looked a lot different compared to last week.
Yeah, definitely a team that maybe is not going to be factored in nearly as prominently in terms of trying to make that run to the to make the postseason and crack in. I believe that was actually one of your earlier predictions. Actually, too, was that this Clippers team was going to fight their way back into the postseason.
They
It
were
might have
on their
been,
way. They were on their way.
and yeah, they were definitely making a play to it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
100%. But let's talk about it from the Pacers side of things because they've been tied to Zubac for a while now.
Mm,
They've been tied to Zubac. They do move off of the. They heavily protected themselves in this trade. Let's be honest,
yeah,
because they made sure to be like, okay, we still want a chance at AJ, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson,
mm,
but we know that if it falls, in this sort of area, maybe we're not going to get as much of an impactful player as we are going to get like a franchise altering one in the top four per se. But but the Clippers also realize, look, if this team somehow fights near to play in, we don't want like their 11th pick this year. So let's just get a 2031 unprotected one there and see how that goes for them.
right,
They kind of covered their ass. They kind of covered their ass a little bit, but they end up getting a center which fits right next to Tyrese Halliburton next year, can fit right next to a Pascal Siakam, and whoever they add, if they end up still getting a top 4 pick in this draft, this
mm,
Pacer team almost immediately going into next year is like an East contender, like immediately. I think this is a great trade for them and not giving up too much. I mean, we knew that Ben Mathurin was probably not going to re-sign there. Being able to convert like a promising player in him into a legitimate starting center in this league, like you mentioned, top 5 DPOY player last year. I think it's just good business overall.
yeah. And I mean, the crazy part is TV. Them trading for a Vika Zubac doesn't really change the logic that regardless of which of the three they get in the top three, they're not running into a wrong answer, right? If they're able to land one of those top three picks, there's a lot of different iterations of this team that can still run very smoothly, even with a Vika Zubac as the starting center. You can run Tyrese Halliburton, and then Darren Peterson at the 2, Aaron Nesmith at the 3, Pascal Siakam, and Vika Zubac. You can run Tyrese Halliburton with Aaron Nesmith at the 2, and you put AJ DeBonce at the 3, Pascal Siakam at the 4, a Vika Zubac at the 5. Or you put yourself in a position where, I mean, maybe you run double bigs with Cam Boozer, or you can just safely bring Cam Boozer off the bench. It's not like they have the greatest center depth ever. Right now, their
Yeah,
backup center is Jay Huff, who's been relatively solid this season, but still nonetheless, like, very much just a backup center and nothing really more than that, right? So when you really think about it, like, they can't really go wrong if they do still get a top 3 pick, even by making sure that their center position is shored up. And this is a very significant upgrade defensively for this team. Very, very significant upgrade as somebody who I think could be a very dangerous pick and roll threat next to Tyrese Halliburton on this team. The one thing that may be a little bit of a question mark is that this team likes to play very up and down, and Vika Zubac has never really been in a high tempo offense. I mean, the Clippers rank bottom 5 in pace of play pretty much every single year, right?
yes,
So that'll be the most interesting thing is how Zubac fits within that new scheme. But everything else about him from a half court perspective kind of is exactly what they need out of a center right now. So, I mean, again, gonna be an interesting question about whether or not Vika Zubac plays and how much. Kind of going back to the Jaren Jackson Jr. Conversation we had earlier, but regardless, I mean, perfect way to come out, and you do it off of a Ben Mathurin contract that I mean, I think we all can say they were not going to be willing to pay.
yeah, no, 100%. This was very well known, like even like a couple months ago, that they weren't looking to like re-sign Ben Mathurin. I think both of us were super high on him going into the season because of the opportunity he's gonna get out with Tyrese Halliburton going down. He hasn't really materialized into that. So the fact that they were still able to use his like potential, his restricted free agency, and the fact that whoever gets him can like sign to a long term deal and get a legitimate center that they lost in like Miles Turner, but the fact that they can just like fill that in for next season when they're competitive with a
Yeah.
Vicha Zubac, I think it's just like again good business. They made sure they protect themselves so they can, if they still end up top of the draft, they can still get one of those generational prospects there. just a good move overall for the Pacers. And I don't think Pacer fans are complaining about trading, even if it does turn to a 2031 pick, to like distant first round picks for a legitimate starting center right now that can help them for the next like 2 to 3 years on a damn good contract as well. He's only making like what 20 million or so. So
Yeah.
shout out to the Pacers for making that trade. I'm excited, super excited to see them next year. And if they somehow end up getting one of those top 3 picks, oh boy, this Pacer team could really like stamp themselves as the number 1 team in the East 100%. But yeah, good move for them overall. We went through all the trades that like were kind of connected to each other. Let's go through some of some of the other important ones that went here. Next one, Jonathan Kuminga saga finally ended. we finally saw an end to this as the Warriors trade him, Buddy Hield, for Kristaps Porzingis. Once we saw the report that Giannis Antetokounmpo was that the Bucks are going to reject any offer from the Warriors from then on, they decided, you know what? Let's just move off this Jonathan Kuminga stuff and let's get a center that who knows how many games he's going to play for us, but at least he fits in what we got. How do you feel about that trade?
I mean, yeah, if you're a Golden State Warriors fan, you're just like underwhelmed. Cause I
Yeah.
mean, like to be in the thick of conversations around Anthony Davis and Giannis Antetokounmpo and to fall all the way down to Kristaps Porzingis, which don't get me wrong, and you mentioned it kind of in passing, like he is a good fit for what they need to do.
Yes.
Like defensively, like Draymond Green's a good fit power forward next to him.
Yes.
I think offensively, his floor spacing fits off very well next to Draymond Green. There's a lot to like about what the theoretical version of Kristaps Porzingis, when healthy, looks like in a Golden State Warriors movement offense, especially as somebody who can spread the floor. Just not really what you thought you were going to get out of a Jonathan Kuminga trade after going so hard for so long to kind of make this work long enough to try to maximize his value. Because that's really what this whole saga dragged out too, right? Was they even dragged it out enough to give him a 2-year contract where the second year is a player option. The second year is a club option, just to kind of make his salary large enough to not only fit in an aggregation, but to entice teams to be willing to trade for him in the first place, right? Because his salary will be high enough to actually be able to, for an opposing team to actually give matching salary in response. So to kind of end up with Kristaps, it's like if you're a Warriors fan, this is how you have to look at it. If you're a Warriors fan, you're glad the drama is over. The issue you run into is now you're trusting Joe Lacob to do something this offseason that's going to be a very interesting one. And that's Kristaps Porzingis comes off the books as an expiring contract. Let's be honest. They might have been fearful to let Jonathan Kuminga walk without paying him. But I'm sure they don't feel any type of insane attachment to the idea of Kristaps Porzingis beyond this year. So that is going to free them up some significant capital that should help. They did also move off of Trace Jackson Davis as kind of a part of that deal that ended up sending them to your Raptors. You know, there's the rumors about maybe being able to bring in LeBron James this summer, given the fact that they're going to have some money freed up, and there's likelihood that the Los Angeles Lakers are not trying to be in the LeBron James, era anymore beyond this season. Of course, LeBron James becomes an unrestricted free agent next summer. Draymond Green has said in recent podcasts and things of that nature that he would like to play with LeBron James. Yep. I'm overglazing this situation based off of reports alone, right? And word of mouth more than anything. But this feels like one of those things where, like, Jonathan Kuminga traded for Kristaps Porzingis is so underwhelming that if they don't do something of real value this upcoming offseason, it's going to feel like all of that drama was for absolute naught. Truthfully.
It really does feel, I mean, like, when you hear that they were, like near the top of the list in terms of, like, Giannis, in terms of, like, potentially doing this trade deadline, in our heads, that was the move that was, like, this is the legitimate last swing possible for them to stay competitive in the Steph Curry era.
Yeah.
The fact that didn't go through, The fact that they ended up just doing a trade for Kristaps Porzingis, and we keep mentioning it's a good fit, but with the way his illness is, and it's again nothing that he can control with the whole heart rate issue, but it feels like it's just like, what other route do you have here? I just don't see any other route for them to still be in that contendership status in the Steph Curry era. So more than anything, it's just kind of a more unceremonious like end to it, because they had like one last chance, like, oh man, even with this Jimmy Butler injury, we have a chance with getting one of the top 3 players in the league. Nope, that opportunity's gone. I don't know if they still make that trade in the offseason, if they, especially now that teams actually have more stuff to give up for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't think that their offer competes with any of that. So it just feels like, that it's a swing. It's a very minimal swing, especially because his money does come off the books next season, and they get out of the long-term Buddy Hield money. Unfortunately, that him and Jimmy Butler have to break up, because that friendship is actually super fun to watch. But it just feels just more, again, like you mentioned, very underwhelmed. And you got to think, like, man, this truly feels like they're hanging on to a legitimate thread in terms of even just being a competitive team in the East, in the Western Conference. As everyone else keeps getting better around them, everything just seems to continue to fall apart for the Golden State Warriors. Hopefully, Porzingis can at least play enough games where they can like have him used in the playoffs. We've seen what a Hal Horford, Kristaps Porzingis on a playoff team can look like, at least like a good version of it. But with the rest of this Warriors team, there's not much to be really like hanging on to if you're thinking, man, they could still contend, because it really doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at their contract cap sheet for next season. $62.5 million for Steph Curry next year. $56.8 million in what basically feels like dead money for Jimmy Butler next year. $27.6 million in the form of a player option for Draymond Green. I mean, Moses Moody's still under contract for $12.5 million next year. They got a couple of restricted free agents. Maybe they can let walk. Pat Spencer might be somebody they convert from a two-way. Quentin Post and Gui Santos, we'll see. Seth Curry comes off the books. Gary Payton II comes off the books. Kristaps comes off the books. But, like, how you fill out that depth chart with those top three making, what's that? Between Curry, Butler, and Draymond next season, making almost $140 million. TV, for that to be their last swing was Kristaps Porzingis is rough.
Yeah, it does feel rough for the Golden State Warriors. Again, hopefully he can play, so at least you can kind of see how it all materializes at the end of the day. But yeah, tough look for the Golden State Warriors. In terms of the Hawks side of things, I still don't get it for them. They don't have, Kuminga probably won't play many minutes for them. They're just basically just shuffling around shooters. They got rid of Vit Krejci for 2 second-round picks. They moved off of Luke Kennard, who's now a member. I think he got traded near the end of the deadline as well.
Yeah, he's with the
Lakers now. He's with the Lakers now. Yeah. Finally, they get some shooting on Luka. Good for them. But it just doesn't make sense to me. On the Hawks side of things too, they need defense. I feel like Jonathan Kuminga hasn't been that sort of defender in a few years. Has it really been trying that hard on that end, and then he's not even that great of an offensive fit next to what they have right now. Confusing stuff. Guess worth a swing on the Hawks end.
For the Hawks, it's kind of interesting because the question that I wonder is, was this their way of picking some version of depth that can go over Zachary Ricochet due to the disappointing lack of development from year one to year two? Because you know what the upside of Jonathan Kuminga is, when he plays relatively well. We've seen Jonathan Kuminga as a 20-point per game scorer in this league, even at his youthful age. This is a guy who we have seen on big stages play well. Hasn't been a great fit for the Golden State Warriors offense, but for an Atlanta Hawks offense filled with athletes, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, filled with guys, rangy wings, ball handling ability, the ability to be very dangerous in the open floor as far as a transition team. That's kind of more of an offense that Jonathan Kuminga kind of fits into, right? As one of those hyper athletes at the wing spot. Is he the floor spacer that Zachary Ricochet was picked to be when he was drafted number 1 overall? No, but has Zachary Risachet truly been that floor spacer for Atlanta either? Not necessarily. So a proven commodity, even if it's been in short sample size, and Jonathan Kuminga, there might be an upside aspect to that of saying, well, Zachary Risachet we still have under contract for another 2 to 3 years. Jonathan, we might have to pay this upcoming summer, but I mean, between Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum coming off of the books, who else do we really have to pay? We already paid Dyson. Nikhil's under contract. Jalen Johnson's under contract. Ayanka Kongwa's under contract. It's not like we're really paying anybody else. So with CJ and Corey Kispert falling off, Gabe Vincent, who they also traded for in that Luke Kennard trade, he falls off as an unrestricted free agent this upcoming summer too. There's a lot of money that's going to open. I think Buddy Hield is also in that conversation as an unrestricted free agent this upcoming summer. That's 4 guys that are going to fall off the books. It's like they're not paying those guys, so giving it to Jonathan Kuminga as a higher upside swing over Zachary Risachet and maybe moving Risachet to the bench. That's one of the only justifiable ways I can look at it, is maybe they just don't believe in Zachary Risachet's development moving forward, and Jonathan Kuminga maybe fits more of what their play style is now.
Yeah, I guess, but at the same time, like even like as like the small sample size like proven commodity, I don't think that Jonathan Kuminga like really does fit into like this team. Right? Like not even as much as Ricochet. Like we've seen even like in the small sports this year, like Kuminga really does well with the ball in his hands. But like, are you really taking the ball out of like a Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson sort of thing? Zachary Ricochet at least plays better off ball. At least the idea like around that is probably better too. But I don't know. I'm just more confused with this Hawks team in general. What seemed to be the offseason darlings this past offseason really has like flipped for the worse for the Atlanta Hawks. I'm leaving like this trade deadline with them with a lot more questions than I am answers. They did get a crap ton of second round picks. I mean, they traded away Vit Krejci. They got rid of Luke Kennard, like we mentioned before. So it's interesting to see what they have there. But I'm more looking forward now, like with everything now settled. Looking forward to what they have to do next season, especially with hopefully something from that Pelicans pick, like really helping them out. Because right now, I'm happy with the Jalen Johnson thing. I still have a lot of faith in Dyson Daniels. There's just a lot more question marks on this team now than I had probably like 3-4 months ago.
This is maybe a team that I would like. I mean, if there's three things this team should maybe go about like taking a strong look at for next season. If you could bring back CJ McCollum on a favorable deal, I wouldn't hate that. Re-signing Jonathan Kuminga, I actually would not hate very much either, if I'm being quite honest. But I mean, that's just from my perspective.
Yeah,
And then if they are able to land, a top 3 pick, I think for this group, the best fit would actually be Cam Boozer. Just because their center depth is kind of struggling. Outside of Onyeka Okongwu, they got Jock Landale now and Christian Koloko. Not very much. I know they took that swing on Asa Newell, but it seems like at least as a rookie, they kind of still view him as a developmental project versus Cameron Boozer. I think it come in like day one, and I think Cam Boozer has the upside of being a guy who can be like a 15-10, a 17-9 kind of guy out the gate. And to know that that's somebody that you can either have start right out the way or be the backup center behind Onyeka Okongwu could be a really big fit. Obviously, we'll do deeper dives on like moves that these teams can make to make themselves better when the offseason hits. So I won't speculate into that too much further right now. But this is definitely, after everything we've seen them do this year, like you said, after being like a team we were so high on after what they did do this offseason, I find myself more intrigued about what they do next offseason just as much as like whatever they do for the rest of this year now, just given the fact that the direction is not nearly as clear.
Yeah, it felt like they were in a clear direction again. We were all glazing them as like, having the best offseason of like so many of these like out of like all the teams from last season. Funnily enough, kind of like how the 76ers team just completely unraveled last year after calling them like the winners of the offseason. I feel like the Hawks are kind of in that same position where they're almost like out of even the play-in spots. But yeah, excited to see what they have. I mean, they still have some good players going forward. It's just what are they going to build around them now past the season? That's what we're going to be looking at. Jay, a team we're gonna rapid fire some of these trades because there's a lot more of the smaller deals coming up.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to your Bulls very soon, by the way. But
And I'm gonna lose my voice right then because I can already feel it going.
yeah. But before we
Oh,
go into that, the Thunder
yeah,
consolidate some picks,
yeah,
a 2026 Houston pick this year, along with 3 second-round picks, and pick up 76ers Jared McCain
yeah.
now add to the team. Now, mind you, Shea Alexander just got ruled out, I think, for the next 2 to 3 weeks with some sort of back injury or some abdomen injury or something like that. So he's going to
Mm,
be out. So funnily enough, I think Jared McCain might get some starting minutes almost like right away, or at least like a good look from the Thunder.
yeah,
But consolidating some picks, I mean, it's the same thing like we mentioned with the Utah Jazz. You can't make all these picks with all these different draft picks. There's just not enough spots on the roster. And the Thunder, we knew that was the case going forward. And now they have a guy who they have under contract for the rest of this season, 2 more seasons, and again, have their bird rights going forward. And someone who last year, before he got injured, looked like the lead candidate for Rookie of the Year. Jay,
yeah.
your thoughts on them picking up Jared McCain?
I mean, another high upside swing, man. I mean, they're a team that just, I mean, some of their players that don't play could be legit top 8 rotation guys on other teams, right? I mean, and in the future, I mean, Jared McCain, shout out to him that he's going to be somebody who I think does fit on this team as a floor spacer, another 3-point shooter.
Yeah,
Um, but
they
think
needed
about it.
that. Yeah,
Nikola Topic still hasn't really played for this team. Former first round pick. Thomas Sorber, taken in the first round. Another guy who might not play, who's not going to play at all this season due to his injury. You know, on a different team, might be in like a legit 8 to 9 man rotation on a different team coming out of Georgetown. Like, the fact that this team is still able to kind of take these high upside swings on guys and have them just a part of the Thunder developmental pipeline is so crazy. And I mean, obviously, the Thunder aren't sweating over a 2026 first round pick from the Houston Rockets, who are going to, probably be a top 4 seed when everything's all done this season, especially when they know that, like you said, Sam Presti's laughing to the bank watching what the Clippers just did, where he pretty much is going to guarantee that he's somewhere in the top 10 as far as a first round pick from them. I mean, the rich get richer. I mean, you want to know how petty Sam Presti is? I saw a clip the other day that he said that he was apparently at the AJ DeBonsa versus Darren Peterson game. That's
yes,
how
he was.
petty that Sam Presti is. He's scouting for a top 2 pick right now. He must have seen the Clippers evil doings get done ahead of the game because he just kind of he felt more than comfortable going to go watch 2 of the top picks go play because he feels like he's going to get one of them top 2 picks, and I don't blame him. So quite frankly, I mean, this is a good old game of the rich get richer. Again, you can't hang on to 1,000 picks forever, and I mean, out of the 4 picks you traded, 3 of them are second rounders. We've seen Jay Crowder get traded for 4 seconds. We've seen who's another good one? Like we've seen a handful of
Yeah,
players get moved for 4 and 5 seconds all the time, right? And they're
yeah,
usually older veteran type players. Nothing super crazy. No, we've never really seen an insane needle mover acquired off of moving around multiple second round picks. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So not too much that I felt like was genuinely sacrificed here. And you get a player, like you said, just last year when healthy, was like basically the runaway candidate to be rookie of the year, honestly. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
great for them.
Yeah, it sucks because like Jared McCain, like once they got VJ Edgecombe, like basically like got pushed out of the rotation like pretty quickly.
Mm.
And it's not that he's not a talented player. I mean, people were comparing this man to like, man, he just needs his like Tyrese Halliburton moment. This guy just needs, him being in the shadows and like him getting into a new team. Now, is it going to be the Thunder? Because like obviously he freaking Shea Alexander is playing in front of him, but it's just the Thunder just being smart with their money. Like they did the same thing where when all of their guys were basically on rookie deals, they signed Isaiah Hardenstein to a 3-year deal so that when he ends up expiring, that's when their new contracts come in. Same thing with this one with Jared McCain. I mean, they have a team option on Lou Dort next year. Of course, they would have to bring Lou Dort back, especially because he's a big part of their culture. But contract-wise, you have a Casey Wallace still on your roster. Now you have a Jared McCain who you have under control for 2 more years. And Alex Caruso, you're paying for 3 more years after this year as well. So them potentially, trading out Lou Dort or maybe just letting him go to free agency doesn't seem like such as a far-fetched thing anymore. And then that saves them a lot of money. And now they have even more guard depth that they can go after. The 76ers, I think they did this trade in terms of getting under the salary cap. I mean, they also moved up. Out of the luxury tax, they traded away Eric Gordon as well, so they can convert Dominic Barlow from a two-way to a standard contract. I think they did. I just feel like with them, like you have talent on your roster. We say this with some other guys, like you want to make sure it works. That's the big thing with these 7 moves. You want to make sure that these guys get that you don't want to move talent out the door just because they don't work. You want to make sure that you find a way to make things work. And I feel like they kind of moved off too early on a Jared McCain. Some 76ers fans I've been seeing are comparing this to like them letting go of Isaiah Joe too early, and he became one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, a key part to that Thunder championship run.
Yeah.
Now they're doing even more business with them,
Yeah.
trading away Jared McCain. So, again, I get it, especially now they have like a space to sign Quinn Grimes to next year's to an extension this upcoming offseason too.
Right.
But man, there's a chance where Jared McCain might become a bigger key to this roster in the near future than we think, especially with like all these like contracts needing to get paid for the Thunder. They're doing good cap management. We're trying to make sure that that when these older guys start to phase out, they have some young guys on cheaper contracts to make sure to kind of fill in those spots later on.
Yeah, they're definitely in a good spot. If you're the Thunder, you hope you get an Isaiah Joe 2.0 situation. Definitely in that situation, especially because I think that Jared McCain has a little bit more upside as a individual shot creator than Joe.
On ball for sure. Yeah, for sure.
As an on-ball creator. So, I mean, if you can get that kind of juice that you saw last season from Jared McCain on this team and as a backup point guard, I mean, you're talking about we already, they already have one of the most dangerous 12-man rotations in the NBA because of having, guys across the board that just really fit their philosophy on both sides of the ball. But, I mean, if you could add Jared McCain, like what you got from Jared McCain last season to that mix, I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think overall, consolidating these picks and then getting like a nice I wouldn't say blue chip prospect, but someone who can like help out this team right away. And again, basically right away because like T.J. Alexander is going to be hurt as well. I think it's gonna be really good for them, and I think like getting him in early, trying to make sure he fits in with the team eventually, I think it's a good move overall. I'm gonna hold it right here because Jay and I were doing a recording. And we were about to talk about more of the minor deals going forward, but there was something wrong with the connection. I think Riverside was acting up a little bit, but we weren't able to record it. So we weren't able to record our thoughts on these final trades. So I decided here, at least for my section, I'm gonna do it for myself. So I'm gonna try to go through all these minor trades that we didn't talk about in the episode that you've watched previous to these, for the past hour and a half or so, and we're gonna try and go through to here. So we're gonna try and talk about these trades. Gonna be a little bit shorter, but I want to make sure that we hit most of the stuff that we didn't hit in the episode further. So let's get into it. Some of the trades that we didn't talk about on the episode: Vit Krejci going to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for Duop Reith, who's out for the season, and 2 second-round picks. If you saw my TikTok, you know my thoughts on it. But Vit Krejci has been shooting 42% from the 3-point line this season, and I know the Hawks made a bunch of moves. They no longer have Luke Kennard, but they still have Corey Kispert on the roster. Now they have Buddy Hield after that trade. So Vit Krejci was a little bit redundant. The fact that they were able to actually sell high on Vit Krejci and get 2 second-round picks, I think was good business from the Atlanta Hawks. Sadly, Duop Reith is out for the season. They could have really used the size there, but they ended up releasing him. But good trade on the Hawks overall. And the Blazers, they need more shooting. They actually attempt quite a bit of threes. They're just not one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the league. So adding Vit Krejci to that could really help them. So nice trade for them. Next trade, again, another trade I talked about on the TikTok, Jaden Ivey and Mike Conley. Mike Conley ended up going to the Charlotte Hornets. But the Bulls received Jaden Ivey in exchange. The Pistons in this trade got a first-round swap with the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is protected. I don't know what the protection is, though. They also get Kevin Huerter, and they get Dario Saric. As for the Pistons, Kevin Huerter adds to a bit to their shooting. They do move up Jaden Ivey, but let's be honest, we don't know if they're going to re-sign him or not. So that was a little bit up in the air. But they were able to get some shooting in Kevin Huerter, who hasn't been shooting well from 3 this year at 31%. But hopefully on a more competitive team, we've seen him shoot, high 30s, low 40s in his career. And overall, he is a 3-point specialist at the end of the day. So it will help him overall alongside Duncan Robinson. Hopefully he can get his shooting back up. But the fact that they're able to get a potential swap is nice. And they also get to move off Jaden Ivey with someone who they're actually going to be still using for especially in their playoff run. They didn't make a big swing this trade deadline, but they were able to make the move anyway. Hopefully, Kevin Herter actually gets his 3-point shooting back up with the Pistons. Next trade. Hopefully, I'm sad that we didn't get to talk more about the Bulls with Jay, but we're going to talk about a little bit about them here. Nikola Vucevic going to the Boston Celtics, as well as a 2027 Denver Nuggets second-round pick in exchange for a Celtics second-round pick this season and Anthony Simons. The Celtics buy low on a center. Yes, he can't really protect the rim, but in terms of the three-point shooting acumen and the play style that Brad Stevens has, not Brad Stevens, what am I saying? Joe Mazzulla has instilled in this franchise, Vucevic fits that. I mean, you already have your center that can, get dirty down low with Nemes Keita and all that, but Vucevic, always been a consistent offensive player. And plus, he's actually a solid three-point shooter, which will fit into the system. They use the expiring Anthony Simons contract. Again, the Bulls get another guard here at Anthony Simons. I'm not sure if he's going to be retained or not. If anything, between Simons and Ivy, I think the Bulls would rather have Ivy because I think he can play a bit more off-ball next to Josh Giddey. But Anthony Simons, he gets a try on the Chicago Bulls. I'm more interested to see because they trade for so many guards, which ones they're going to end up retaining past this season. So that's definitely a storyline to look out for. As for the Celtics, buy low on a center. And if it doesn't work out, he's a freaking expiring contract. Hopefully Vucevic can actually, let's see how good his skills can translate into a team that's looking to go deep into the playoffs. Next trade we're going to talk about, though, there are so many random ones. Mason Plumlee for Ousmane Dieng. I mean, the Thunder get another center, which I guess could help. Ousmane Dieng, it was strange because he got moved 3 times in this deadline. I mentioned him a few more times later on. But the fact that they traded multiple first-round picks to move up in the draft to get him, the Thunder don't miss a lot on trades. So the fact that they missed on Ousmane Dieng is definitely a rarity. But they finally move off of him. I guess they have some center depth. Mason Plumlee is now actually on a contending team again. Probably since his time with the Nuggets. It's been a minute. But the Bulls continue to make some moves as they trade away Mike Conley, who they just acquired in the trade, and Kobe White in exchange for Colin Sexton, another guard to add to the rotation. Yes, they have a ton of guards. They end up getting Ousmane Dieng as part of the Hornets, as part of a member of the Charlotte Hornets there, and they get 3 second-round picks. The 3 second-round picks is what the Chicago Bulls trade here. I mean, Colin Sexton, how is he? I don't know where he's going to fit in the litany of guards that they have over there, but the 3 second-round picks for Kobe White, it sucks because Kobe White a couple seasons ago couldn't, at most, get you 2 second-round picks. Probably not unprotected, maybe some heavy protections on them, but you could have traded him for some sort of multiple first-round picks, especially one unprotected first-round pick, more than likely. And the Bulls, as they usually do, they wait too long. He's going to be a good player. It's nice to see that the Hornets are trying to at least help out their bench a little bit, because it feels like when the starters are not out there, the Charlotte Hornets kind of fall apart a little bit. I mean, the starting lineup is has a crazy good record this year when they're playing healthy. But so they needed to address, a reliable guy to lead their second unit, and Kobe White is that guy. I don't know the prospect of keeping him long term. Again, you have money tied up into LaMelo Ball. Of course, you have Colin Knippel on your team, Brandon Miller. So you have a lot of perimeter players. If Kobe White can get a contract there and just be their full-time sixth man for the next couple of seasons, that would be nice. This is kind of a little bit of a trial for him here. Who knows if they make it to the play and maybe they make it further. Who knows? But Kobe White could be a good addition to that team. I think he's definitely more reliable than the Colin Sexton. Again, I don't know how Colin Sexton is going to fit into the Bulls' plans going forward. They have so many guards to kind of choose from. But they got the 3 second-round picks. It is a team with the Bulls. They should have done this stuff a lot earlier, but that wasn't the case. Moving on to my Toronto Raptors, they made a couple moves at this trade deadline. The first one they made, trading away Ochai Agbaji in a second-round pick, as well as I think they also gave up, or was it? I think it was the Clippers that gave up $3.5 million in cash to the Brooklyn Nets. That's who they get. The Raptors receive Chris Paul, and the Clippers get, I think, the draft rights to Vanja Marinkovic. The Clippers wanted to trade Chris Paul without actually having to pay him and having him count against the cap. So they got out of that, and they don't have to pay the luxury tax anymore, which is good on them. I don't know if the Raptors are going to keep around Chris Paul. He hasn't been officially been released yet, so he's technically still on the roster. I don't know if he has to report now that the trade deadline has passed, but it would be just super strange to see him end his career on the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they did exactly what they need to do and get underneath the first apron. trading away Ochai Agbaji, and they had to attach a second round pick to him as well. It just sucks that Ochai can't really work out for the Raptors. It seems like someone that the Raptors could genuinely use. At least the idea of Ochai Agbaji. He was supposed to be a good 3-point shooter, a good defender, but he was just been horrible this year. I think he's shooting under 20% from three, under 40% from the field. He has just little spurts. Last year he was solid, but he just wasn't really that guy for them this year. He fell out of the rotation, had some good defensive moments, but unfortunately couldn't do that for the Raptors, so they had to move off of him. We knew that was going to happen. It was the easiest trade to make in terms of getting underneath the first apron or having to pay the luxury tax, so going to Raptors doing that. Now that the trade deadline has passed, is Chris Paul going to report to the team? Is he going to be a part of the Raptors, locker room? Do they want to add that to the locker room? They need some toughness. Chris Paul definitely does bring that. But it's going to be interesting to see if the Raptors do end up keeping him for the remainder of the season or just releasing him so he can choose what team he can go to. Maybe some other team can try and go for Chris Paul. It just sucks that this is an unceremonious end to the Chris Paul career. Maybe he can find his way on the Pelicans for like one season, for the remainder of the season, to kind of bring it all back to the beginning. Maybe LeBron can help out his boy one more time. Who knows? But let's see what happens. Chris Paul still as a member of the Raptors right now. Maybe he can, as of right now, maybe he can help out the locker room. Who knows? Next trade I want to discuss here, Lonzo Ball being traded away from the Cleveland Cavaliers. It seems like they got nothing in return, but they traded the 2 second-round picks to get off of him. So the Jazz ended up taking 2 second-round picks, and they ended up releasing Lonzo Ball. It just sucks that Lonzo Ball just couldn't. It felt like one of the better offseason moves from the Cavs to bring in Lonzo to replace Ty Jerome, good defender, improved 3-point shooter for at least over the last couple of years. But he has just been horrible for them this year, and to the point where they felt like they needed to bring in Dennis Schroeder, which I think is going to be a good backup point guard option for them. And they dealt with they addressed the perimeter defense concerns, and they got Keon Ellis as well. So he wasn't on that team anymore. I wonder who picks him up. I think someone will definitely give him a chance and try to, see if they can get a little bit out of him, especially a playoff team. But it just sucks because it felt like the perfect move for the Cavs to get Lonzo, and it just didn't work out. Next trade, Jock Landale to the Atlanta Hawks. They needed some center depth. They got rid of Kristaps Porzingis, as we talked about earlier in the episode. And I guess Jock can help out a little bit. Again, more size. Glaka, he can stretch the floor a little bit. Sure, why not? And Jock Landale has been solid in the absence of Zach Edey when he was a member of the Grizzlies this year. So maybe he can help out the Hawks a little bit. Nothing too much, though. Tyus Jones gets traded to the Charlotte Hornets, as well as 2 second-round picks. The Magic, I don't believe, have got anything in this trade. Yeah, another one of those deals that looked good in theory for the Orlando Magic, but it just didn't work out. He was supposed to be a nice backup point guard option, and he forgot how to shoot. Just hasn't been great this year. Had to attach 2 second-round picks just to get off of his contract. Maybe he could do well with the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, now that they got rid of Colin Sexton, yes, they still have Trey Mann on the roster, but if Tyus Jones can become at least somewhat resemblant of that good backup point guard that we saw in Memphis, he could be good for the Hornets, especially someone who could be a nice distributor, maybe feeding someone like a Kobe White in the second unit. So, nice swing for the Hornets, but I think they really just got him for the 2 second-round picks, which they were able to acquire there. Next up, Trayce Jackson-Davis. Yes, the Warriors, after missing out on Giannis Antetokounmpo, started, gathering some assets, traded away TJD in exchange for a second-round pick. The Raptors finally addressed their center problem with someone who fits their scheme. Someone who's a good connecting passer, someone who's athletic, someone who, in theory, can work on switches against some perimeter players at times, but definitely not the center that many Raptor fans are looking for. We were tied to Yves Missy, Day'Ron Sharp, Nick Richards, Jay Huff, and we ended on TJD, who you got to remember was a starting center for the Warriors a few years ago, but over the years he's been kind of just pushed out. People want to say, Steve Kerr's not great at developing the young talent. Like, maybe there's an argument to be made there. But he was beaten out by guys like a Kevon Looney, who was on the older side, Al Horford this year, Quinn Post over the last couple of years. He just fell out of rotation of the Warriors. I mean, there's still things to like. He's a rim-running center. He's had a few, good, blocking. Like, he's a solid, athletic center that can block shots. Maybe not a full-out rim protector, but it's something that the Raptors could use, especially because Jakob Poeltl has still been out with injury for most of the season, and we needed some big man help. So I think, in theory, this is not a bad deal, but with all the other things, like all the other names in the trade market, I think Raptor fans were just expecting a bit more. But this is still like a solid move. I mean, you're only giving up not even your own second round pick, a Lakers 2026 second round pick, and you get someone who can help out your team right away, who fits the system, and he's still super young. I mean, he has a team option for next year. He can still be a part of this roster if the Raptors choose to do so. It's just like the Raptors, I think we're trying to look maybe a bit too far down. I talked about this, I think, on the Raptors page. Teams knew that the Raptors needed a backup center, so they had all the leverage in this situation. Whether it's even like in the Kings situation where they wanted to trade Domantas Sabonis, they knew that the Raptors need to get out of the Jakob Poeltl contract, so they were trying to force their hand and trying to trade, multiple first round picks and unprotected first. And Bobby Webster didn't flinch. He didn't end up flinching. He's like, look, if you guys are gonna, all these backup centers are gonna be willing or to be traded for a first round pick, I'm not willing to do that. So let's just, do something very small, very low risk, and just get Trey Tyson Davis. At least we got a new center in here. It just feels like overall for this Raptors is more of like a C sort of deadline. But this is something that maybe Raptor fans should have expected. I think there were just way too many Sabonis trade rumors to maybe, come to that conclusion for a lot of Raptor fans. But this was probably the most likely scenario. Hopefully he can actually do well for the Raptors and we can revitalize his career here a little bit. More Bulls trades to talk about. I mean, at least the Bulls, after trading for so many guards, get some sort of big. They get Gershon Yabusele in exchange for Dalen Terry. Very inconsequential. Let's move on. Chris Boucher, my boy, gets traded from the Celtics to the Utah Jazz for nothing. I mean, the Celtics had to attach a second round pick just to get rid of him, and they get nothing in return. I get some cap relief. He was on a minimum deal, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I don't know how much longer Chris Boucher has in this league. It's really unfortunate, but maybe he can find a home somewhere. I just don't know where it's going to be. Next trade, Hunter Tyson and a 2032 Nuggets second round pick get traded to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for a 2026 either Clippers or Hawks picks. I think whatever is the most favorable, or I think whatever is the least favorable. Get some underneath the tax for the Nuggets. I guess that's all they need to do. It's a nothing trade. Same thing with this one. Eric Gordon's now a member of the Memphis Grizzlies for second round swap. 76ers want to save money. I think they're going to convert Dominic Barlow into a standard contract. I mean, he's been solid for them this year, so good for him. And clearing up money to re-sign Quinn Grimes this upcoming summer, which is someone I think the 76ers want to keep long term. I mean, they moved off of Jared McCain to do so as well. So that's definitely the direction that they're going into. Lots of other random trades coming. Xavier Tillman gets traded to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know what the heck. I think it just gets the Celtics out of the luxury tag. So the Hornets are just able to bring him in. Why not? The Hornets make a trade away Tyus Jones for Malachi Branham. I guess, get a bit younger. The Mavericks, I feel like you get Ryan Nembhard and him. You're going to just get some solid backup minutes. Basically the same sort of player. I think Ryan Nembhard might actually just be the out of the rotation because of how good he has been playing so far this year. Lakers. That's the team that ended up with Luke Kennard as they trade away Gabe Vincent and a 2032 second round pick. They needed shooting. I mean, they don't have a lot of shooting on Luka, which feels like absolute treason because you know how well Luka does around with shooters around him. And they finally add one in Luke Kennard. Like I mentioned for the Hawks, I mean, they had to get rid of Vic Krejci. They got now rid of Luke Kennard because they added Buddy Hield in the Kristaps Porzingis trade. They added Corey Kispert in the Trae Young trade. So they have a lot of shooters, and a lot of them just feel redundant. So they're able to get a second-round pick in exchange for Luke Kennard. Solid business over there. But this is one of the bigger ones near the end of the trade deadline. Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips in exchange. Well, the Bulls end up trading them in exchange for Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller of the Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as 4 second-round picks. The T-Wolves, we saw what they were doing now with trying to get rid of Mike Conley and just trying to clear the books. Because now they bring in Ayo Dosunmu, who's probably going to be their starting point guard now. Let's be completely honest. They add him. It might be between him and Dr. DiVincenzo. We have to wait and see. But they bring him in, and now they have potential room to sign him in the offseason. I think he's a good point of attack defender, solid shooter, and he fits that Timberwolves team perfectly. I think him and Dante kind of splitting reps at the point guard position could be nice there. And they finally end the Rob Dillingham experiment after 1.5 years. They move off Canadian Leonard Miller. again, the Bulls, as a part of this deadline, garnered a lot of guards. They got a lot of them, and they got a bunch of second round picks. They at least they did some moves and at least got some assets. Good for the Bulls. But nice on the Timberwolves. They grabbed someone and now Sumu, who I think could be actually a nice long term piece for them and fits their timeline 100%. The Bucks continue to make some trades. They get Ousmane Dieng from the Chicago Bulls as well as Nigel Hayes-Davis. The Suns get Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey from the Bucks, and the Bulls get Nick Richards. After all those trades for guards, the Bulls finally get their center. It's going to be a rotation now of Gershon Yabusele, Jalen Smith, and Nick Richards. Nothing crazy to be, to talk about. But at least they got some centers because they just have a bunch of, feels like, guards and a little bit of wings there as well. So, not too bad from the Bulls to get at least some sort of center on that roster. They're definitely tanking, though. Let's be honest. They're definitely tanking. Another one of the big trades that kind of happened at the last minute, Jose Alvarado gets traded to the New York Knicks in exchange for Dalen Terry, who the Knicks got in the Gershon Yabusele trade, alongside cash and 2 second-round picks. I like this for Jose Alvarado, who was born in Brooklyn. I think he grew up as a Knicks fan, though. And he gets to go to a winning scenario for the first time in a while. We know that he could be effective in the playoffs in the very little time he was there with the New Orleans Pelicans. And I think this is a good move for the Knicks. I mean, Tyler Kolek has been solid this year for sure. I don't want to take anything away from that. I mean, he had a really good Christmas game too, but you don't really have that, guaranteed backup point guard. Is Tyler Kolek going to play minutes in the playoffs? Who knows? Jose Alvarado, probably a lot more reliable, kind of fits into their defensive scheme as well. And I think, again, adds to that, New York, hard-nosed mentality. And I think he can, at least, it's a nice change of scenery because he's been on a losing Pelicans team for the last couple of years now. And I think this is, again, a good move from the Knicks. Just upgrading at the backcourt point guard position. Let Tyler Kolek some more time to develop. Miles McBride has been in and out of the season with injuries, so you definitely need to guard depth. And Jose Alvarado could definitely provide that. So I think that was definitely a good move from the Knicks. And the Pelicans get some second-round picks out of it. So at least they got some assets for Jose. And that's all the trades. I want to know your thoughts down below, what you guys think. And again, sorry for this end of episode sort of mix-up. It was kind of mixed up a while ago, but at least we got to talk about some more trades. Even though it was just by myself, the remaining trades from this trade deadline. I've had to give it a grade to be honest, overall, I would give it a B minus around there. It's been solid. There wasn't a lot of, noise for a lot of these trades going into it, but I'm glad we got some things to talk about. And I know it was a bit more of a weirder episode with this little cutoff, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it overall. But yeah, we have a lot more coming up in the next couple of weeks or so. We're going to be back next week with another episode. Probably talking around the All-Star, maybe seeing how the new players look in their new homes. And yeah, the playoffs are coming out around in the next 2 months. Going to be a lot to talk about, and you're going to be able to lock into that on the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. It's not usually like this. We're going to be good for the next episode. And yeah, make sure to check, again, both our accounts out. The links will be found in the description down below. And make sure to check us everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, podcast networks. Appreciate you if you're still sticking around on the YouTube as well. Thank you again for 100 subscribers. I'm going to keep saying it because we've been actually doing pretty well on the YouTube, and we appreciate all the guys that are been tuning into the episodes as of late. So be sure to look out for more great episodes going forward. And yeah, we're going to end this episode. An extra 20 minutes here of just me talking about the other trades. But we want to hear your thoughts on all of them below. And we'll see you again next week for a new episode. Hopefully a full episode of just me and Jay as well. So yeah, hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. That was Jay from earlier in the episode. We are signing out. Peace.